Hello. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the build-up to D-Day, and in particular, the tragic disaster that was Exercise Tiger, or as it's sometimes known, the Battle of Lyme Bay. This was a live fire training exercise that resulted in the loss of over 700 American service personnel. In April of 1944, a series of exercises were to take place in readiness for the invasion of Normandy, and one of these was to take place on Slapton Sands in Devon. Slapton was chosen because of its close similarity to the coastline around Pooperville. It matches the straight long beach, the similar width and the similar slope and geography of its equivalent, and that equivalent was forming part of what would be codenamed Utah Beach. So, as of December 1943, Slapton and her 3,000 residents were evacuated as their homes were turned over for invasion preparations. It's worth noting that while the government forced the evacuation, it didn't put anywhere near as much effort into rehoming, and as a result, most of those 3,000 people had to find somewhere else to live on their own. But I digress. With the area evacuated, over 15,000 US personnel moved into the area and began training. And the exercise in question involved 9 tank landing craft and 30,000 troops, backed up in close support by the Royal Navy. And on the evening of the 26th of April, the first wave set off to spend the night circling in the English Channel for the equivalent amount of time they would be at sea during the invasion. And then at 7:30 in the morning, the designated H-hour, both for the exercise and the real thing, they were to storm the beach under live fire conditions. And live fire was very important at this stage, let's not pretend otherwise. Most of the soldiers and sailors that were involved were young, new, and hadn't seen combat. They had no idea of the sounds, smells, smokes, and flying chaos that was going to be in that beach landing. And they had to get used to that, because if they panicked and froze under that panic on the actual day, it's going to be an outright massacre. Nothing is more important than the success of this invasion. But this is where the first of many problems and many tragedies started out. That morning, several of the landing ships were delayed arriving at the rendezvous point, and as a result, Admiral Don Moon elected to delay H-hour to 8:30 in the morning. However, not everyone got that message. So when the boats of the original second wave landed on the beach, their original allotted time of 7:30, they landed right in the naval bombardment. You can imagine the results. The result was an approximate death toll of 450 US servicemen, if you can imagine that. And you'll have to imagine that, because official figures have never been confirmed or acknowledged by either the British or the United States government. Now, if that wasn't surprising enough, then in taking stock of the unfolding disaster, the decision was made to proceed with the exercise. And this decision has come under scrutiny ever since. And while it would have been sensible and even humane to postpone all training, there was a case, a potentially strong case, for carrying on. Basically, you have to understand that at the time of the exercise, there are 40 days until D-Day. There's just not time to be pausing, holding inquiries, and starting again. So early the following morning, they set up for attempt number 2. But the course of true invasion never does run smooth. And at 1:30 in the morning on the 28th of April, 9 German fast attack E-boats managed to slip through the outer patrol boats and launch torpedoes. As the 8 landing craft slowly made their way towards the coast, they were suddenly lit up by gunfire, tracer rounds and explosions. In short, all hell broke loose. LCT ships were unarmed and were sitting ducks for the fast attack boats, and the convoy's only protection was a small corvette, HMS Azalea. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the first torpedo struck the side of LST 507, and that sent surviving men jumping over the side into the water, where it became apparent that they'd donned their life vests incorrectly, those that had worn them at all. The resulting oil slick from the stricken ship almost immediately caught fire. Assistant radio operator Stephen Sadland described the scene. He said all hell was breaking loose aboard ship. Fire was everywhere. Ammunition as well as gas cans were exploding. Sailors were running all over the place. The The skipper couldn't get any of the pumps or the engines going because we'd lost all electricity. We had nothing. We were a floating, burning hull of a ship. Finally, the skipper yelled, "Abandon ship." Shortly afterwards, LST-531 was hit by 2 torpedoes in quick succession, and both craft sank in a matter of minutes, leaving their crew and passengers in the freezing cold channel with incorrectly applied life jackets. And many drowned under the weight of their heavy invasion gear. When the attack subsided and calm returned, the captain of LST-515 disobeyed orders and returned to the scene to look for survivors. Manning the first boat out into the Erie battlefield was 15-year-old Eddie McCann. The water was 43, 44 degrees, and these men wouldn't last long in the water because that water was cold. And there were men on fire. Men were swallowing their tongues, heads in one place, legs in another place. I was trying to help get my men get their tongues free and stuff out of their mouths. We brought them out of the water, and then I come across some of my friends. One was Lieutenant J.G. Saucier. We'd started out in North Africa and went through Sicily and Salerno and all those invasions together, and here I had to leave him in the water. And an even bigger problem than this was that 10 officers who knew the actual invasion plan were missing. But by the following morning, they had been accounted for and their bodies recovered. Had they fallen into the hands of the Germans, that would have cancelled the whole invasion. Because everybody talks in the end. When the death toll was counted, 749 US sailors and soldiers had lost their lives in the attack. That's more than lost their lives in the real landing at Utah Beach. In fact, 40 days later, Stephen Sandon was landed in the first wave at Utah Beach. He described it as a walk in the park compared to training. As well as the death toll, the exercise highlighted major holes in the plan for D-Day and the logistics of mounting that part of the invasion. As a result of the lessons learned, the radio frequencies were standardised so that all ships, both British and American, were on the same channels. Had this been the case in the exercise, then when the Royal Navy alerted the US to the presence of the E-boats, the US would have heard them. Also, mandatory life vest training was provided for all Allied troops, and a detailed plan for recovering survivors of wrecked craft was put in place to be conducted throughout the main landings. Disastrous as it was, and although it's little comfort, it's worth considering what the impact on the invasion would have been if these errors and lessons had not been highlighted by Exercise Tiger. We can debate forever, and we will, about what should have happened and when, and that's very much the luxury of an armchair admiral 75 years after the event. Because I've never had to invade France, so I'm not sure I'll ever truly understand. One thing Exercise Tiger does highlight to me is the above and beyond contribution of the United States during the Second World War. Here are over 700 people who lost their lives just practicing the liberation of someone else's continent. And we can overlook that at times, and we shouldn't. Today, they're memorialised in the form of a preserved tank that took part in the exercise, which now stands at Tollcross Beach as a permanent reminder. The plaque reads, "This American Sherman tank took part in the D-Day practice landings at Slapton Beach in 1944, where it was lost at sea and there remained until its recovery in 1984. It stands as a memorial to those American lives lost during the course of the D-Day practice landings at Slapton Beach in 1944. Their sacrifice was not in vain. Be they ever at peace." No words we have could put it any better than that. Think about them. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.